We've now got access to our list of libraries inside of the library list component, which means it's time to maybe pivot away from Redux a little bit and focus more on the React side of things and just figure out how we are going to render this list of components. Now in the past, we have already figured out how to make a list. We did so by using the map function to turn a list of data objects into a list of components. Now this is a fine approach for small lists, like limited lists of data. But as soon as we start trying to render like dozens of items or hundreds or even thousands of items, we need a better approach when it comes to the performance side of our application. Now I want to preface all this by saying, yes, our list of libraries is very small. We've only got like 9 right now. Yes, it is a small list. But I still want to pretend as though maybe it's a very large list of libraries, right? And I want to figure out how we can render this very large list of libraries appropriately. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we're going to look at the theory behind rendering a large list of items, and then we're going to implement it inside of our component. So I'm going to pull a diagram up on the screen really quick. And I know this is kind of a nasty one, but just bear with me. In the background, I've got a mobile device. So we're going to pretend for a second that I've got a mobile device that's running an app that is trying to show a list of items, right? And maybe I've got so many items that some number of them are visible on the screen, like the top half right here, and it's not until I like scroll down, so like click here and then drag up, right, that I'm going to scroll these bottom items into view. But you can kind of imagine that, perhaps these items are there, they're just off the screen of the device, and it's not until I scroll that they kind of move up and appear on the screen. Okay, so that's the idea behind this diagram right here. Now I'm going to go forward one second. This is another diagram that is kind of modeling how we are building lists right now by using the map function. On the screen, I've got an item in every one of these green boxes. So the box that says item represents like a JavaScript object, like for us, a single album or a single library or whatever object it might be. And then the green box around it represents a React component. So with our current approach of rendering lists, we take every single item in the list and we instantly map it and create a distinct component, right? Like we instantly create one component for every item we have. So if we have a list of like 100 items or 100 books or libraries or whatever it might be, we create 100 components in memory to show every single one of those the instant we go to create our list. So what's the downside to this approach? The downside is that even if our user can only see like 4 or 5 components on the screen at a time, we still have to go through all that upfront work of rendering 100 different items, and then those 100 different items, 100 different components, might be just sitting there in memory. So that is the source of poor performance, the upfront rendering of a bunch of items and then holding them in memory. Mobile devices are traditionally memory constrained, so any time that we can reduce our memory footprint inside of our app, it is definitely a good thing. Just to be really clear one more time, I just want to echo it again. The reason that mapping over a list of items to build a list is bad for performance is that for every item in that list, we are instantaneously creating one component. So 100 items in the list equals 100 components that we have to create up front. To address this performance issue, React Native includes a little tool called ListView. The ListView is a component that remedies this this issue of rendering a bunch of items by using a little trick. Okay, so this is the last kind of weird diagram we got to look at. The ListView is a component, and we are going to use it to obviously, render a list of items to the user. The ListView works by figuring out what items in the list are visible to the user at a given time. So if this is my mobile device in the background over here, then the only items which are kind of like technically visible would be these right here. So the ListView figures out what items are visible, and then it creates a single component for only the items that should be visible on the screen. So in this case, instead of creating 100 components for the 100 different items, it might only create 6 components for these 6 items that are actually visible on the screen. Now the real magic happens when we scroll through the list. Okay, when I start scrolling around, that's when the magic happens. Let's imagine that I like click here, or like, I tap on the screen here and then pull up. So I'm intending to bring these bottom items into view. The list view watches for any scroll event from the user. So like as soon as you start to scroll, the list view kicks in and it says, oh, scrolling's happening. Something like I might need to handle this in some fashion. The list view watches for any item that starts to scroll out of view. So again, if I click here or like drag here and then drag up, this item at the very top might be moving out of view very soon, right? So maybe I now have a situation where it's like that, where this item is starting to come on the screen and this item just left the screen. So what the list view does is it takes this instance of the component right here, it moves it down to the bottom of the screen. Let me fix the ordering. It moves it down to the bottom of the screen. There we go. And then it plugs the new item into it. So the whole idea here is that as a user scrolls around, the list view is reusing the same components over and over and over again, and it's just swapping out the data that sits inside of them. So if I then scroll a little bit more, and now I'm like down here, the list view is going to say, okay, this component right here is not visible to the user anymore. I'm going to take that component, I'm going to throw it down here, and I'm going to stick this new item inside of it. And then this item up top, yeah, that one's no longer visible, so it doesn't need a component anymore. So basically, in practice, the way that the list view works is to take only a subset of our total list at any given time and only render that subset. In addition, it takes whatever kind of wrapping list item component is being used and it reuses it throughout the entire list. Okay, so that is how the list view works. That is how we gain performance on really long lists of data. Let's now stop the lecturing and continue in the next section and focus on implementation of building a list view.